Two women whose names you probably don't recognize just saved an entire nation. While Pharaoh commanded genocide, Shiphrah and Puah, ancient midwives, chose life over law, sparking a liberation movement that echoes through modern medical missions. Today, we're exploring how these biblical healthcare pioneers connect to Ellen G. White and the Seventh-day Adventist medical missionary movement. You'll discover how ancient acts of medical courage shaped modern health reform and why the Sabbath became central to both stories. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Who exactly were Shiphrah and Puah, and why should we care about two midwives from ancient Egypt?
According to the search results from CBE International, these two women stood on the front lines of what they call the spiritual war we call the Exodus. But here's what's remarkable. They're actually named in the biblical text when even Pharaoh isn't.
Wait, they get names but Pharaoh doesn't?
Exactly. The Sabbath School Net notes that in contrast to the nameless Pharaoh, the two midwives are named Shiphrah and Puah. They are highly esteemed because they feared the Lord. This tells us something huge about their significance.
So what did they actually do that was so important?
Pharaoh commanded them to kill all newborn Hebrew boys during delivery. But according to Exodus 1:17, the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. This was the first recorded act of civil disobedience motivated by higher moral law.
That's incredible courage. But I'm curious about something. Why would Pharaoh speak directly to midwives? Wouldn't he have generals or officials handle that?
That's such a great question. The CBE International research points out this was unusual. The fact that Pharaoh spoke directly to them suggests their services were of high value to the kingdom. They likely served both Hebrew and Egyptian women, making them indispensable.
So they had this unique position of trust and access. And their names, do they mean anything specific?
According to the International Missionary Society, Shiphrah means to decorate, and Puah means shine. But here's where it gets really interesting. Medieval commentator Rashi suggests these weren't their real names, but descriptions of their work.
What do you mean?
The University of Michigan Medical School research explains that Shiphrah was called this because she improved a baby's physical condition, and Puah is the crooning sound that she made to comfort babies when they cried. They were practicing holistic care thousands of years ago.
So they weren't just delivering babies, they were providing comprehensive care and comfort. That sounds remarkably modern.
Exactly. And the University of Michigan study calls them the first healthcare providers in the Bible, making them our professional ancestors. Their approach combined medical skill with compassionate care and moral courage.
Now, fast forward about 3,000 years to Ellen G. White. How does she connect to this ancient story?
Ellen White became what the Adventist Review calls the most influential force guiding the missionary mandate of the early Sabbath believers. But specifically, she drove the development of Adventist health institutions, what they called sanitariums.
And this was part of a broader mission strategy?
According to the Adventist Review, Ellen White's prophetic guidance gave the church a fourfold missionary mandate that became a blueprint for its successful mission. Health reform was one of the four pillars, alongside education, publishing, and evangelism.
But why health specifically? What was her reasoning?
The Adventist.org research shows she understood that the health of our bodies can impact the health of our minds and can also impact our spiritual health. She saw the connection between physical wellness and spiritual liberation.
That's fascinating. So like Shiphrah and Puah, she saw healthcare as more than just medical treatment.
Exactly. And here's where the timing gets really interesting. According to Ministry magazine, Ellen White received her major health vision on Friday evening, June 5, 1863, at sunset time when believers gathered to welcome the Sabbath.
So the Sabbath timing wasn't coincidental?
The Ministry magazine article asks exactly that question. Was God's choice to communicate at such a specific time, the commencement of the Sabbath, intentional? The research suggests it created an inclusively holistic view of the Sabbath experience.
Help me understand the Sabbath connection here. How does that link back to Shiphrah and Puah?
Well, both stories involve healthcare providers choosing God's law over human authority. The Sabbath represents this same principle, choosing divine rhythm over worldly demands. It's about liberation from oppressive systems.
So you're saying the Sabbath itself is a form of resistance?
In a way, yes. Ministry magazine notes that Ellen White saw the Sabbath as designed to bring men into communion with God and providing time for spiritual and relational healing. It's countercultural rest in a work-obsessed world.
And both the ancient midwives and Ellen White were essentially saying healthcare should serve liberation, not oppression.
Exactly. The International Missionary Society notes that Ellen White taught women should be educated and trained to act skillfully as midwives and physicians to their sex, echoing the same empowerment we see with Shiphrah and Puah.
What's really striking to me is how both stories involve women in healthcare challenging powerful male authorities.
That's such an important observation. The Jewish Bible Quarterly research calls Shiphrah and Puah the first example of Israelite resistance to the genocidal decrees of Pharaoh. Ellen White similarly challenged medical establishment norms of her time.
And what were the results? Did Ellen White's health reforms actually work?
The results are pretty remarkable. According to Adventist.org, her health council is arguably the inspiration for one of the world's blue zones, or healthy populations with a high number of centenarians. Adventists consistently live longer than average.
Wait, so there's actual measurable health outcomes from this approach?
Yes. And remember, Ellen White died in 1915 at age 87, when the average life expectancy around 1900 was just 49. She was living proof of her own health principles.
That's almost double the life expectancy. What specific principles was she advocating?
According to the search results, she advocated for cleanliness when germ theory wasn't widely accepted, fresh air and exercise, proper rest, appropriate sunlight exposure, temperance, and plant-based nutrition. She was ahead of her time scientifically.
So like Shiphrah and Puah, she was going against conventional wisdom to preserve life.
Exactly. And both examples show healthcare as fundamentally about human dignity and liberation. The Bible Hub research notes that Shiphrah and Puah's actions set the stage for the eventual deliverance of the Israelites from Egyptian bondage.
It's like they understood that controlling people's health is a form of control over their freedom.
That's a profound insight. And Ellen White's medical missionary movement grew into a global network. The Adventist Review notes that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has grown to more than 22 million members worldwide, many drawn by the health message.
So what started with two midwives refusing to kill babies became a worldwide health and liberation movement?
In many ways, yes. The University of Michigan research notes that Moses' parents follow in Shiphrah and Puah's footsteps by intervening to save Moses, despite the illegality of the action. It created a pattern of principled resistance.
And that pattern continued through Ellen White to modern medical missions.
Exactly. The Ellen G. White estate notes that she wrote more than 100,000 pages on a wide variety of spiritual and practical topics, and is considered the most widely translated American author, her works having been published in more than 160 languages.
That's incredible reach. But I'm curious, what would Shiphrah and Puah think of modern medical ethics? Would they recognize their influence?
The University of Michigan study suggests they'd recognize the core principle. They note that modern healthcare providers still struggle with questions of life and death, and that the provision of healthcare requires more than following guidelines, but demands that we ask deeper questions of meaning.
So the same moral courage they showed is still needed today.
Absolutely. And the Sabbath principle Ellen White emphasized, taking time for spiritual and relational healing, is more relevant than ever in our burnout culture.
It's fascinating how these ancient principles keep proving relevant. What's the bigger picture here?
I think it shows that true healthcare has always been about more than just treating symptoms. It's about human dignity, liberation from oppression, and creating conditions where people can flourish, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
And both Shiphrah and Puah and Ellen White understood that health and freedom are fundamentally connected.
Exactly. The Bible Hub research notes that because of their faithfulness, God dealt well with the midwives and gave them families of their own. Their courage was rewarded with life and legacy.
So when you step back from all this, what's the lasting lesson? How do these ancient midwives and a 19th century health reformer speak to us today?
I think they show us that healthcare at its best is an act of liberation. Whether it's refusing to kill babies or challenging medical orthodoxy, true healing requires moral courage and a commitment to human dignity over institutional power.
And the Sabbath principle, that rhythm of rest and restoration, becomes a form of resistance against systems that would exhaust and control us.
Exactly. These stories remind us that the most powerful medical interventions aren't always technological. Sometimes they're moral, spiritual, and deeply human.
Here's what strikes me most. Two women whose names most people don't recognize literally changed the course of history by choosing life over law. And that choice echoes through every medical mission, every act of healing, every moment when healthcare providers choose conscience over convenience.
And Ellen White took that same courage and built it into a global movement that's still saving lives today. From ancient Egypt to modern blue zones, the principle remains the same. True health is about liberation, not control.
Thanks for joining us on Copilot Podcasts. The next time you encounter healthcare that truly heals body, mind, and spirit, remember Shiphrah and Puah. Their courage to choose life over law didn't just save babies, it sparked a liberation movement that's still changing the world.